Welcome to the special edition Vintage Model Railways electronic magazine. My name's Mark Hobson. In this segment, Meet the Collectors, we get to meet the people behind the collections. I'd like to introduce you to our first featured collectors, Robert and John. Thank you.
Well, my earliest memories started when I received for my birthday in about 1950 a very basic Hornby train set, the M1 set, and that was Clockwork Hornby, of course, and that sowed the seed of interest.
It was possibly my first 00 train set, about 1949, bought to me by my grandfather.
My prized possession should really be Hornby, but it isn't. It's a Bassetlaute Royal Scot, a 460 LMS made in approximately 1948 in O gauge, and it's featured running on the VMR website.
I think there's quite a few things that I really treasure. One would be the Hornby, the Ultimate Hornby, the box Princess Elizabeth, which is boxed, the original box, original instructions, everything's with the original. I'm actually the third custodian of that. It's only had two owners previously. Another would be a Bassetlaute Mogul live steamer that has possibly only been test run again in its original box, and it came with all the papers, little funnel and sheets.
On our traditional mantelpiece sits a ceramic clay glazed model, about 2 foot long, of a Caledonian engine and tender, and it was a surprise gift for me by my son, who's now 45 years old and working in Europe.
Nothing, there's not any room because we have a French clock and rolled open vases.
Well, I started after getting the initial Hornby set when I was around about 10 years old, but I then was preoccupied later in life with marriage and home, family, and then collecting classic cars, and then I got back into the hobby in 1973.
Well, when I was 5, I suppose, really, but I think the collection really started after we came to Australia, and we got married, and I got married, and the children came along, and I got my old 00 set out for the children, and I went to a model railway show that was advertised in Brisbane, and met somebody there who started the club in Brisbane, and I started to expand the collection by buying things that I didn't have when I was 5 or 6 years old. So that was the start of my collection.
O gauge, 7mm to the foot, or 1/4 inch if you like, and 32mm gauge. But I've endeavoured to acquire a good knowledge about Hornby 00 because that's an equally important part of the hobby of collecting Hornby trains.
Well, now I collect in various scales. I graduated from 00, I still got 00, but I went into O gauge, and I have mainly O gauge now.
Well, at the moment I'm not, because we're downsizing house. I'm not buying, but basically auctions, starting with the famous auction at Penrith in 1973, the Penfold auction, where we got 2 bootfuls of O gauge trains. And then in later life, the auctions run by the Hornby Railway Collectors Association of Australia. In those days, when it was under good management, and we had a truly excellent auctioneer.
In the early days, the rarer items still had to come from England. There wasn't a great variety of items for sale in Australia, but as time went on, I started to do model train shows at the AMER exhibition, and used to have a sign up in front of the layout with wanted to buy trains like these, and result of that was it brought a lot of trains that people had put away and didn't know what to do with them, and they would bring them in. Some of them nearly donate to somebody who would treasure them and look after them.
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to say again, the most valuable loco is the LMS Royal Scot by Bassett Loke.
Again, hard to say, because there's several things that I have purchased and I get quite a lot of pleasure. I think one that was quite a surprise, I went onto eBay one afternoon and just going through the Bassett Loke section, and there was a Bassett Loke Princess in the States, and it was a buy it now. The figure was very, very reasonable, so I actually put in a bid of the buying price, and just as I was doing it, a friend came round. He's actually into model aeroplanes, and I said, "Oh, hang on, I'm just putting a bid in." And he said, "Oh, what are you offering?" And I said, "Well, I'm just going to offer what he's asking, because it's still very reasonable. And if I put an offer, somebody else might come in and outbid me and I'll lose it." So I ended up with a Bassett Loke Princess Elizabeth.
Well, I've always hungered to have a number 2 signal gantry, but they're pretty expensive. There's now replicas made by Ace, and I've decided the only way I'll have one is to build one.
Possibly be the Bassett Loke Coronation. The last one I saw, which was for sale in England, was £8,000, which would equate here to about $16,000 for one train, which is a little bit excessive, I think.
I would advise them to join a society, an association, a group where they mix and meet with fellow collectors. And the Hornby Railway Collectors Associations in Britain, New Zealand, Holland, South Africa, and there is one still going in Australia. That would be my advice.
It's possibly easier now because there's a lot coming onto the market in the last couple of years, and the easy to obtain items like little 4-wheel wagons, common locomotives, are not fetching the money that they fetched years ago. So just start off collecting basic things, and I think you can get quite good buys at auctions and even on the internet now at quite reasonable prices.
Well, I guess the traditional things we look for are condition, but mint boxed, I guess, is a bit scary because you can barely take the risk of running it. So I like something that's really, really well presented, but where you can run something and enjoy it running without feeling too concerned.
Well, firstly, if it's something that I particularly want, the condition of it, is it original? Has it been restored? Has it been touched up? So that you can actually assess how much you're going to pay for it.
Well, not the latter, because to get something of everything would be virtually impossible. I guess I'm somewhere in between, where I have a collection of variety which I can run and enjoy.
I actually run most of my collection from time to time. Some things don't get run for periods of time. I don't have a 00 layout. I used to have a 00 layout years ago. I don't now, and it just relies on if we have a meeting at a 00 where the host is a 00, as a 00 layout. At least I can take something out of my 00 collection along to run. But my own O-gauge collection, just in a rotation, runs on the my O-gauge layout. But I don't spend hours and hours like some people do building scenery and it can be very time consuming.